Hey YouTube, thanks for the click. Andy here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the 2024 Beats Pill. This is a Bluetooth speaker, obviously, but it also offers USB-C connectivity for latency-free audio that you can use when connecting to a desktop or a laptop PC or any other device. But specifically connecting to my computer is what interests me because I love the idea of having one speaker that I can use as an on-the-go Bluetooth speaker and then plug in when I'm at home for upgraded audio on my gaming laptop. So let's talk about if the Beats Pill is any good at either of those roles or both of them, and if it's something you should consider. The design of the Beats Pill is, well, pill-shaped. I don't particularly like or dislike the design, though I think I'd prefer something a bit more squared off. It comes in several colors. I ended up with the champagne version because it was available for $80 as renewed excellent on Amazon, a pretty substantial savings over the normal $150 MSRP. Along with this speaker, you'll receive a matching USB C-to-C cable and a wrist strap. The entirety of the speaker, except for the speaker grill, is coated in a very nice soft touch rubber. This covers the buttons as well, but there's no issue pressing the buttons as the rubber is very pliable. There are 4 buttons total, one for power, which is also used for pairing, a multifunction button for track controls and call controls, and volume up and down buttons. Finally, around the back is the USB-C port for charging and wired audio, which is recessed in the rubber coating, but remains as easy to access as any other USB-C port I've used, and I appreciate that it's centered, which gives it a very clean look when you are using it for wired audio. While I don't love the look, the overall physical design of the Beats Pill is excellent, with lovely materials, easy to press buttons, and no fiddly port covers like most waterproof Bluetooth speakers have. So now let's talk about user experience, which is where I think the Beats Pill underachieves in a number of ways. I'll start with a minor annoyance, which is how Bluetooth pairing is handled, done by holding down the power button. Since you also have to hold down the power button to turn off the speaker, which only provides a delayed audio cue that starts when it's actually powering off, it's easy to accidentally put the speaker into pairing mode when powering the speaker off. I've gotten used to it now, but using the multifunction button for pairing seems like it would have been an easy way to get around this issue. Another minor annoyance is how loud the power on sound effect is by default. Fortunately, you can adjust this once you've paired it to a phone, at least an iPhone, but it's loud enough that on that default setting, when you turn the speaker on and off, people in other rooms will be able to hear it. One of the reasons that default volume is so obtrusive leads to a more serious complaint, which is the total lack of EQ on the Beats Pill. The Pill fits the classic Beats stereotype of having excessively boomy bass. This means that the startup tone can reverberate through furniture and walls, and unfortunately so does a lot of music. I live in an apartment and try to be considerate of my neighbors, and I often find myself having to listen at a lower volume than I'd prefer due to how overwhelming the bass is. This is most noticeable in pop beats, but it can affect any genre of music. This is made even more frustrating due to how otherwise great the sound quality is. For songs where the bass is reserved enough to not set the Pill off, it provides a very pleasing listening experience and sounds much bigger than it is. Even for more bass-heavy songs, the audio balances out nicely at higher volumes, where the highs and mids can catch up with those juiced lows. Unfortunately, the volume required for that just isn't suitable for apartments or other shared living situations. The saving grace of the sound quality for me is that the excessive bass is not really an issue at all for watching videos and gaming, which I do a lot of. Even explosions and other loud sound effects don't seem to ever trigger the overpowering bass, and instead just provide a nice fullness that cheaper Bluetooth speakers I've used have been lacking. The sound quality overall then is just kind of frustrating, because I think the hardware quality is really good, but the EQ just pushes the bass way too hard. And since the Beats Pill retails for $150, the lack of any EQ option to correct that is a huge letdown to me. I don't even think it's sensible to make the argument that of course it's boomy bass, it's Beats, because for several years, Beats headphones have matured into the type of crowd-pleasing but pretty flat EQ that you get from like a Bose or a Sony product. So I think it's a missed opportunity that the Beats Pill is still clinging on to its party boy roots. Alright, and to round out my airing of grievances, as I mentioned earlier, I specifically bought this for the latency-free USB connectivity. And I'm glad to say that works, but unfortunately, the process for using USB audio with the Beats Pill is needlessly complicated. I'm sure some of you are thinking, What's he talking about? Don't you just plug it in like every other USB audio device ever made? Hilariously, no. To connect a USB audio device, you'll need to have the speaker turned on, then hold down the power button while you plug in the USB-C cable to the back of the speaker, at which point you should hear a plonk noise if it connects successfully. Oh, and make sure you don't hold the power button too long because remember, that will put it into pairing mode and then you'll need to power down the speaker and start all over. In case you're thinking that perhaps this is just a really challenging computer science problem to solve, I also have an Anker PowerConf A3301 speaker, what a name, another Bluetooth speaker with USB connectivity, and it instantly connects as an audio device when plugged in by USB. As needlessly awful as this process is, it might just disappear into the routine of my life if it actually worked 100% of the time. Don't get me wrong, it usually works at least 95% on my Windows PC and weirdly like 75% on my work Mac. But when it doesn't work, I occasionally end up having to reboot the whole computer instead of just the speaker. Since I sometimes just want to plug in for a quick video or a call, I oftentimes just grab the Anker speaker instead and deal with the worse audio quality. Perhaps mine's defective and this is why it was returned to Amazon to begin with, but given its otherwise perfect functionality and the weirdness of the decision to require manually pairing USB devices to start with, I suspect this issue is endemic to all Beats Pills of this generation and possibly other generations. One final thing I want to mention is the built-in microphone, which works over Bluetooth or USB-C, and it's totally usable, but it's not great and it's probably worse than the mic built into your phone or laptop. So you'll probably only ever use it if you happen to get a call while you're connected, or just out of sheer convenience if it's closer than one of your other devices. All right, and those are really all of the specific points I had to talk about on the Beats Pill. I think as a Bluetooth speaker alone, at its price, I would probably prefer a cheaper option with more balanced audio quality. But most of those, I'm specifically thinking about like the Anker Soundcore Bluetooth speakers that you can get for like $30 to $50. Those unfortunately don't have USB playback, so those aren't really an option for what I'm looking for here. The Anker PowerConf, there is a higher end version. The one I have, the audio quality for playback is pretty terrible compared to the Beats Pill. So, and it's only $30 cheaper at MSRP. You can get them pretty cheap on eBay. I haven't checked what these are going for on eBay. But I mean, I don't think there's enough of a savings there to justify the drop off in audio quality, even though it is a more convenient device to use. So maybe if you're just 100% focused on business use and you don't really care about music or game audio quality, then it could be a better choice for you. And I haven't tried the more expensive Anker PowerConf speakers. Those also could have significantly improved playback quality, though I'm a bit skeptical of that. And then the other option I found, because there really aren't very many, at least that advertise this functionality, there's one called the Tecsun PL990, and this is actually a shortwave radio, so it's just like a pretty high-end portable shortwave radio that just happens to be a Bluetooth and USB speaker. Apparently the quality is pretty good, but that's, from shortwave radio enthusiasts, and I think a lot of those, the quality is quite poor because it's, just focused on being able to hear speech. So yeah, I don't know. Shortwave radios look cool. I'm kind of considering it for a reason to get into it and buy one. But at $300, it's not really in the same price category. So with all of that said, I think as much as I'm annoyed by all of the minor problems, and especially since they seem so fixable on the Beats Pill, that it makes it almost even more annoying that the hardware seems great, but it's just the lack of EQ and the default EQ being so aggressive on bass and the weird procedure for connecting to USB devices. If they could fix that, it would be perfect. And the sound quality is good enough, and there's so few other competing devices that, to be honest, as much as it annoys me, I think I would probably buy it again. Because there's not really anything else that fills this role, and it works well enough that I can put up with the nonsense. So I hope this was helpful if you're looking for a speaker that will fill this kind of Bluetooth USB role. If you have any questions, definitely leave a comment and I will do my best to get you an answer. Have a good one.